In his private, quiet room, Boren continued to stare at a photo pinned under a large board. It wasn't just one or two photos. Dozens of photos with the same figure filled his personal space. There were two photos that Boren always fixated on. Photos of a man who seemed to have vastly different atmospheres and auras to him. These were photos of Golf that Boren had obtained himself. Actually, he wasn't just a casual acquaintance of Golf. He would always encounter him outside the dormitory when Golf left, and this particular photo Boren had secretly taken it himself when Golf was at the library with his child. As for this photo, Boren had acquired it from Golf's private data. It was strange. There was something peculiar about Golf's personal data. Boren was able to access this data because he had once attempted to apprehend Golf on charges of child abduction, a charge he fabricated to gain access to Golf's private information. "Who are you really?" Boren muttered while staring at the photos of Golf inside his private room. Knock knock. Boren quickly left his personal room when he heard the sound of knocking on the door to his office. "Come in," Boren said as he settled back into his chair. Lionel entered Boren's office, carrying several pieces of paper in his hands. He walked over and sat down in front of Boren. "This is what you asked for," he said, handing the papers to Boren. Boren took the papers. "Something feels strange and illogical. What are you really trying to investigate about this man?" Lionel asked. The papers that Lionel had given him were photos of Golf and a file with his family records. "I want to know if he's actually human or not. His personal data and age are incredibly different, and the same goes for his family," Boren said, examining the documents. The papers indicated that Golf was almost 60 years old, but he looked like a young man in his mid-20s. His family's data was also similarly strange. "You're going to investigate him without telling Mr. Mew?" Boren nodded. "Are you crazy? You want to get fired? He's already forbidden you to find out anything about Golf or his family." It was true. Mew had already forbidden Boren twice from investigating Golf's background and family when he had caught him trying to follow Golf. Since then, Mew had given Boren one more chance. If he continued investigating Golf, Boren would be fired. Then should I just stay silent? My family died because of Mew, and everyone involved with him seems strange, like they're not human. Even Mew. Boren replied. "Now you suspect Mr. Mew too?" "I've suspected him for a long time," Boren retorted. "Huh?" Lionel let out a long sigh. "Do whatever you want, as long as I've warned you." He then left Boren's office. After Lionel left, Boren again focused on the data about Golf's family. It stated that he had a stepmother and his biological mother had left years ago. But oddly, if Golf's biological mother had died years ago, why did her personal information look like it was forged? Even the date of Golf's stepmother's marriage to his father was earlier than the date of Golf's biological mother's death. The paper didn't mention the cause of Golf's biological mother's death. Golf became more curious. He took his laptop and tried to find out more information. In a quiet room, only him and Golf, who was fast asleep on the bed. Mew was sitting on a chair. In front of him was a laptop displaying a photo of Golf and Mile, along with their conversation at the park. He had read the conversation between Golf and Nani almost 200 times, especially the part that said, "Keep saying sorry. I can't pay my debt now so that I have an excuse to meet you. I don't hate gay men. I just don't like it when a man is too forceful with his gay partner." Have you ever experienced that? Yes, if I may ask. Who was that person? He's dead. Seeing Mile boldly say, I want to keep meeting Golf Maid. Mew incredibly angry and annoyed. He wanted to kill Mile. However, upon seeing Golf say he's dead, Mew thought deeply about who Golf was referring to. But why did Golf say he was dead? Just a few days ago, Mew had met with Golf. When Mew sensed someone was about to peek at him, he quickly closed his laptop and looked back. Sure enough, there was Golf trying to get up but continuously falling back down. Hey, you're awake, Mew said, approaching Golf. Golf ignored him. He only glanced at Mew for a moment and tried to sit up again until Mew finally helped him. Silence. There was no conversation between the two of them. Mew focused on staring at Golf, while Golf sat in silence, lowering his head and playing with his fingers. Golf, Mew called. Golf replied lazily. Have you ever met Mile? Golf was silent for a moment, lost in thought. Yes. How many times have you met him? Golf scoffed, annoyed by Mew's question. Do you need to know that too? Just answer. Twice. Only twice. Golf retorted, slightly agitated. Really? Golf looked at Mew sharply. What's the point of lying to you? You already know anyway. He said this and lowered his head again. Mew chuckled. Where's Kevin? Golf interrupted. You've already sent him back, haven't you? Mew remained silent, not answering Golf's question. Immediately, Golf turned his head and furrowed his brow when he didn't receive an answer from Mew. Are you lying to me? Mew remained silent. Golf, growing increasingly frustrated, began to pummel Mew's chest. Mew simply grabbed Golf's wrists and let him hit him. After a few minutes, Golf's blows weakened, his head even falling against Mew's chest. He began to cry softly, truly feeling like he had been in vain, engaging in sex just to free his child, but to no avail. Sorry, you bastard. Slap. With all his might, Golf slapped Mew's right cheek. While Mew remained silent, Golf immediately opened a nearby drawer and took out a syringe. As he was about to inject it into Mew's neck, Mew blocked him by grabbing his wrists, but Golf wouldn't give up. He continued pushing Mew's grip until he broke free, and the syringe pierced the side of Mew's right neck. Argh! Damn it! After successfully injecting the syringe, Golf shoved Mew's body away. He then got off the bed and moved away from Mew. Mew, still under the influence of the tranquilizer in the syringe, was disoriented. Golf searched for a sharp object, finding a small piece of metal under the bedside lamp. He picked it up and tried to pry open the door, which was equipped with fingerprint, password, and facial recognition technology. Golf was nervous because his attempts were unsuccessful, and his backside was still hurting. He tried to find something heavy, like a vase, and used it to bash against the door of his room. Door. It still wasn't working. Golf tried to find another heavy object before Mew regained consciousness, as the sedative wouldn't last long. Then, suddenly, he heard footsteps from behind him. He grew increasingly nervous when he saw Mew trying to get up and walk towards him. Golf panicked. He was truly scared of what Mew might do to him if he was caught. Sweat poured down his face. He wasn't even wearing a single piece of clothing. Then, suddenly, the door opened. Mew, door. Instantly, Golf rammed into Arson, who had just opened the door. As soon as Golf managed to get out, naked, he grabbed the gun from the two officers guarding the door to his room. Damn it! Why did you open the door? Mew hissed, almost fully recovering from the sedative. Arson was still dazed, staring at Golf's pristine white body, covered in numerous hickeys. Slap! Mew hit Arson on the back of the neck, jolting him back to reality. Then, slowly, he walked towards Golf. Golf trembled. He was actually afraid to hold the gun, but he had no choice. He continued to back away as Mew approached. "Don't come any closer," Golf shouted in a trembling voice. The two guards tried to forcibly take the gun from Golf's hand, but Mew stopped them. Finally, the two guards stood in front of Mew to protect him from Golf's pointed gun. "Golf, calm down. I won't do anything to you. Hand over the gun or..." Door. 3 bullets flew towards one of Mew's guards, who was trying to approach him, hitting his head, chest, and abdomen. "I told you not to come any closer," Golf shouted. Mew and Arson were completely shocked to see Golf dare to pull the trigger. Golf himself was surprised that he had dared to touch the trigger. He was trembling even more, his body rigid. "Golf, calm down, we won't come near you, but just hand over the gun." Door. 2 more bullets flew, hitting the neck and abdomen of Mew's other guard. Both of Mew's guards were now unconscious. Whether they were still alive or not, we didn't know. "Golf," Mew shouted. Golf was even more afraid now. The distance between him and Mew wasn't that far. It didn't seem like he could shoot Mew successfully. He glanced around and, after making sure there was no one else, immediately turned around and ran. "Damn it," Mew cursed. "Don't let the other guards chase Golf. I'll handle it," Mew told Arson, as he didn't want the guards to see Golf's naked body. Then, Mew began to chase after Golf. Honestly, Arson wanted to chase after Golf too, but he knew Mew would get angry at him. Seeing the hickeys on Golf's neck, chest, and lips, Arson was deeply heartbroken. But what could he do? It was his destiny, after all. But Arson couldn't help but chuckle a little when he remembered that Golf's penis wasn't as big as his own. Golf's footsteps were frantic. He kept running, exploring the entire mansion. His body trembled. He wasn't sure he could escape this house. Then suddenly, his steps stopped as he saw a basement behind a large door. He slowly opened the door and entered the room, going down a few steps until he saw a cell, like a prison cell. Golf stared for a few seconds, then snapped back to reality and tried to slowly walk deeper. But suddenly he heard what sounded like a child crying. He stopped again to focus on the screams and cries of a child who seemed to be terrified. He even thought the sound of the cries wasn't unfamiliar. "Kevin," he whispered softly. Then he ran towards the cries, but suddenly, thump, Golf fell to the ground, the gun he was holding falling far from him. His heart pounded as he looked at what he had accidentally seen behind the iron bars of the cell. Before he went to the source of the child's cries, he was breathless, his body unable to stand. He continued to stare at the figure of a young girl who appeared unconscious and locked in the cell. Her legs were even bound by iron chains. "Prim," he thought. "No, this can't be." Golf immediately shook his head in disbelief at what he had just seen. Bourne was now standing in front of a luxurious house with a fence blocking his way in. The house was none other than Mr. Lee's residence. Suddenly, one of the guards approached Bourne from behind the gate. "Who are you looking for?" "Egg. I'm from the Southern Police Department. I'm Bourne. I have an appointment with Mr. Lee." Upon hearing Bourne's response, the guard took a phone receiver and started making a call. After a few minutes, The guard suddenly opened the gate for Boren and allowed him to enter. Boren immediately entered the sprawling grounds of Mr. Lee's house. Noticing many children's toys scattered around, he wondered if Mr. Lee had a child or grandchild. Soon, he arrived at the front door, which had already been opened by two maids. Boren entered Mr. Lee's grand house. Once inside, the two maids led him, instructing him to follow them. They finally arrived in front of a room, and the maids, before leaving, instructed Boren to open the door himself. Boren slowly opened the door to reveal several people inside the room. He bowed his head in respect. "Mr. Boren, please take a seat," Mr. Lee said, before dismissing his subordinates from the room. Boren sat down in a chair near Mr. Lee and immediately took out a piece of paper, placing it on the table in front of Mr. Lee. "I'm here because I want to know the cause of Golf's biological mother's death," Boren said afterward. Mr. Lee glanced at the paper Boren had given him, which contained information about Golf's family. Then, he looked back at Boren. "It's not difficult for me to tell you, but can I trust you 100%? Mr. Lee said. "No one told me to find out about Golf's family background. I'm doing this because I want to help Golf uncover the truth about his mother's death." "Listen," Mr. Lee interrupted. "Isn't there another reason?" he asked. "If your only reason is to help Golf, I can do that myself if I want. I want to catch Mew," Boren said. "Mew? Golf's family is connected to Mew, and I want to know who Mew really is and arrest him." Mr. Lee was slightly taken aback by Boren's statement. "So, can I know about Golf's mother's death?" Boren said. "Golf knows that his mother died when he was still young, around 6 years old. He died because of a planned murder, orchestrated by Golf's stepmother and her friends." Mr. Lee paused for a moment. Golf's mother was killed and suffered gunshot wounds all over her body, and Golf witnessed everything that happened to his mother. That's why he is traumatized by gunshots. Boren quickly jotted down what Mr. Lee was saying. "Then how did you meet Golf and take care of him until he grew up this much?" Boren was very surprised to hear about the cause of Golf's mother's death, especially since it had traumatized him. "I'm friends with his father. His name is Alexander. And when I learned that Alex also wanted to kill Golf after killing his mother, I took Golf away from his family. Since then, Golf never wanted to go back there." Mr. Lee answered casually. "What's the name of Golf's stepmother?" Carla Tyne," Mr. Lee said. "Knock knock. Excuse me. Here are your drinks." A maid entered, delivering drinks for Boren and Mr. Lee. Then, she quickly left Mr. Lee's office. "Then, what are the names of Miss Carla's friends who helped her murder Golf's mother?" Boren asked again. Mr. Lee was silent for a moment, seeming to hide something. "Sorry, I can't tell you that. It's enough that you know the cause of Golf's mother's death." "All right, no problem," Boren said. "So, what's the name of Golf's biological mother?" "Annie." Boren wrote down what Mr. Lee had said. "Why didn't you report this case to the police?" "Because I didn't want to make Golf keep remembering his mother's death." Boren glanced briefly at Mr. Lee. "Where does Mr. Alexander live?" "You need his address too. This isn't enough evidence to make them admit their guilt to the police." Hearing Boren's response, Mr. Lee stood up to retrieve a piece of paper from the cabinet. He wrote down Alex's address and gave it to Boren. "Thank you for your help. I'll be on my way then." "Be careful," Mr. Lee said. "Don't go to his house alone. You might die there." Boren was a little touched by Mr. Lee's words. He bowed again and immediately left Mr. Lee's residence. Bourne was now in his car. He kept thinking about what Mr. Lee had said until his phone rang. He answered the call from Min. What? Where are you? Why, I know you need help, right? Park your car at the bend before the left turn. I'm there. Bourne immediately ended the call from Min, almost reaching the bend Min had mentioned. Sure enough, there was a black car parked at the side of the road, and a man was sitting on the trunk. Bourne parked his car at the side of the road, got out of his car, and approached Min. Were you following me? Bourne said, patting Min on the shoulder. Yeah, the point is, you need my help, right? How did you know, Lionel? I asked him where you went. Where are you going now? Min asked. Follow my car. Bourne replied. He got back into his car to head to Alex's residence. Golf already knew where the tranquilizer was because he had checked the drawer next to his bed last night without Mew's knowledge. Prim, he thought. No, this can't be. He was shocked to see the woman he had always longed for, now confined in a cage with her legs bound by iron chains. But Golf wasn't completely sure if it was really Prim, his ex-girlfriend. She looked more like a teenage girl because of her purple clothes and her hair, neatly tied in a ponytail at the back of her head. Her dull eyes made Golf feel sorry for her. He tried to slowly get up because his buttock was still sore. He was about to touch the cage where the girl was locked, but suddenly Mew grabbed his arm forcefully and pulled him out of the basement. Let go! Let me go! Golf repeatedly struggled to break free from Mew's tight grip, but all he felt was pain as he tried to resist. Mew didn't respond to his words or the blows Golf delivered. He continued to pull him forcefully until they were outside the basement. Mew locked the door again, then stared sharply at Golf. Golf shivered slightly under Mew's intense gaze. He didn't dare to speak or rebel again when he saw the sharp look in Mew's eyes, as if they were telling him to shut up. A few minutes after locking eyes with Golf, who was now silent and looking down, Mew carried Golf like a koala. He brought Golf to the bedroom on the top floor. Once in the room, Mew seated Golf on the sofa. He then locked the bedroom door with his fingerprint. Afterward, Mew went to the bathroom to get a bucket of warm water and the thick cloth. Then, Mew knelt in front of Golf, cleaning his feet with the warm water he had brought. Using the thick cloth that he had soaked in it, Golf felt stiff, seeing Mew's drastic change in demeanor. He was colder towards him, often staring sharply at him, and doing things at his own will that Golf couldn't understand. Honestly, his heart was pounding. He was afraid of what would happen next. Would Mew become violent with him, or... After washing the bottom of Golf's feet all the way up to his thighs, Mew grabbed his wrist and began to dampen it with the warm water-soaked cloth. Mew rubbed the blue marks on Golf's arm that were caused by his grip. Then he cleaned the other side of Golf's hand. Afterward, he glanced at Golf, who was still looking down. Mew lifted Golf's waist, making him stand straight in front of him. Then he turned Golf around so that his back was facing him. Then Mew pressed his body against Golf's back, as if hugging him from behind. While washing the front of his body, Golf gasped when Mew accidentally touched his penis, causing it to be splashed with warm water. Sorry, just hold on for a second, Mew said coldly. Then Mew cleaned Golf's penis with his hand, gently stroking it to clean the remaining semen and lubricant on his penis. After that, Mew turned Golf back around, facing him. He wrapped Golf's arms around his neck, and Golf stood on tiptoes because Mew was too tall. Golf only reached Mew's ear. Then Mew continued to clean Golf's back with the wet cloth, as well as the crease of his buttocks. Golf instinctively gripped his arms tightly, startled by Mew's actions. Mew smirked, but he still tried to hide it because he was still in a rage. After finishing cleaning Golf, Mew sat him back down on the sofa. Then he went to get clothes for him. Mew brought white clothes, both shirt and pants, along with perfume. He started putting the white pants on Golf, and Golf obeyed until Mew finished dressing him. Then Mew sprayed perfume all over Golf's clothes. You, Golf choked. The scent of the perfume that Mew had sprayed was too strong. Seeing Golf choking, Mew stopped spraying him with perfume. Then he gently pulled Golf's waist and sat him down on his bed to comb his hair. It was still quiet and silent, neither of them initiating a conversation. Then Golf spoke. Egg? Who are you hiding? He stopped mid-sentence when Mew stared at him sharply again. Nothing. It's just that she looks like... Be quiet, Mew said after finishing combing Golf's hair. She can't be Prim, can she? Golf, Mew shouted, making Golf lower his head again. Why did you leave before hearing what I had to say? Mew murmured, gently tilting Golf's head up. You tricked me. I wasn't finished saying it, but you interrupted me and slapped me. Mew retorted. Golf was silent. He still didn't understand the situation. I intended to introduce you to Kevin, but you locked Kevin in the basement, didn't you? Golf said immediately. Golf. Mew raised his voice slightly. I told you not to interrupt me. Listen to my explanation until I'm finished. Golf stared intensely at Mew. You didn't intend to lock Kevin down there, did you? He said. He's just a child. He's too young. And you left a child that young alone in the basement balcony? He wasn't alone, but he was crying. Golf argued. Golf, please don't make him cry. He must be scared down there. Golf said. Mew let out a long sigh. You still want to see Kevin, don't you? You're going to introduce me to Kevin, Golf said with a beaming smile. Mew stood up and extended his hand to Golf. Golf still hesitated for a moment, then took Mew's hand and he led him out of the room. But now, Mew wasn't taking him towards the basement. It looked like a luxurious dining room. Slowly, Golf heard the sound of his son chattering behind the wall. The sound became louder and louder until they were almost at the entrance of the room. Golf stopped Mew, holding him beside the door. What's wrong, babe? Mew murmured, turning to look at Golf. I just want to see him. No need to introduce me to him because afterwards, you're going to return Kevin to Mr. Lee, right? Golf said. Mew was silent. If he meets me now, he'll always think about me and his appetite will go down. Golf continued. I'm not going to return Kevin to Mr. Lee, Mew said, then immediately pulled Golf's wrist, not allowing him to respond. Daddy, Kevin shouted when he saw Golf there. He ran and immediately hugged Golf. Golf caught Kevin in his arms and hugged him like a koala. Where have you been, Daddy? Why did it take so long for you to get here? Kevin said, making Golf confused. Daddy had some errands. Sorry. Daddy? Golf pleaded, gently pinching Kevin's cheek. Kevin smiled. In his right hand, Kevin held a piece of bread. Golf looked around the room and saw Violet, who kept smiling happily, as did Mew. Are you going to stay standing there? Mew murmured. Sit down, he said, patting the chair next to him. Golf walked over and sat next to Mew, but one chair away from him. Then Golf focused on Kevin in his lap. He took out a tissue to wipe the crumbs off the edge of Kevin's lips. "How many times have you eaten?" Golf asked, pointing to the bread in Kevin's hand. 9 times. This is the 10th time. Golf shook his head slightly. "Can Daddy have that?" he said, still pointing at the bread in Kevin's hand. "You want this, Daddy? But there's still more over there," Kevin replied, pointing to the bread in front of Golf, which was still plentiful on the dining table. "Daddy will just take this, okay?" Golf said, taking the bread from Kevin's hand. "Don't eat too much sugary stuff. Tomorrow, okay?" Golf pleaded when Kevin started pouting in anger. "Is Daddy going to meet Kevin again tomorrow?" Kevin immediately cheered up. Golf looked at Mew for a moment, then looked back at Kevin. "Daddy doesn't know." "Kevin wants to meet Daddy again tomorrow," Mew said. "I just want to be with Daddy." Kevin replied coldly. "Yeah, okay." Instantly, Golf turned back to Mew, staring intensely at him and furrowing his brow. "But Daddy borrowed egg." Golf pinched Mew's thigh. He didn't like being called Daddy. "Borrow your daddy for a while, okay?" Mew continued, pulling Golf forcefully out of the dining room. Seeing Golf holding hands with Mew made Kevin pout in disapproval. Finally, Violet soothed Kevin. "Is this the house?" Mean said when he arrived in front of a luxurious and grand house, no less spacious than Mr. Lee's house. Bourne looked at the paper in his hand, which had Alex's address written on it, and it was true. This was indeed Alex's residence. "Do you have a gun?" Bourne asked. "It's in the car." "Why?" Mean replied, pointing to his car. "Grab it." Mean immediately grabbed the gun from his car and handed it to Bourne. "Only one?" Bourne asked again. "That's the office gun. That's all there is." "What for? Don't you have any other sharp weapons?" Bourne said. "I do." Bourne went back into his car to get a folding knife. "Bring it. Keep it in your pants pocket," Bourne said. Mean complied. Then the two of them slowly walked until they reached the gate of Alex's house, and 2 guards approached them. "Who are you looking for?" one of the guards said in a very firm tone. Alexander. "Is this Mr. Alexander's residence?" Bourne replied. "Yes." "Who are you?" "I'm from the Southern Police Department," Bourne said, showing his business card. "I'd like to see Mr. Alexander." "Just a moment." One of the gate guards called to another guard, who was standing in front of Alex's house door. Then, a few minutes later, the guard came back to the gate and immediately opened the gate for Bourne and Mean. Bourne and Mean entered the gate, led by the guard, until they reached the gate of the house. Then, they were guided again by a maid inside the house until they reached the living room. Bourne and Mean sat side by side on the living room sofa. After a few minutes, a man in a black suit arrived. The man sat down in front of Bourne, crossed his right leg over his left knee, and stared intensely at both Bourne and Mean. "Excuse me for interrupting. Are you Mr. Alexander?" Bourne asked. "Yes, it's me. What can I do for you?" he replied. "I just wanted to ask you something," Bourne said, placing a piece of paper on Alex's table. Alex took the paper, which contained Bourne's notes about the death of Golf's biological mother and the attempted murder of Golf. "You want to arrest me?" Alex said afterward. "If it's necessary, we will arrest you, sir." "But is Miss Carla home?" Bourne replied. "No, my wife is out of the country with our son." "Then I will ask you something, Mr. Alexander." "Go ahead." "Do you know this man, Mr. Alex?" Bourne said, handing him a photo of Mew. Alex paused for a moment intensely staring at the photo of Mew. "He's the son of a friend of mine," he replied casually. "Friend? Yes. Why are you asking about this man?" "I can't tell you, sir." "And is Golf the only child of you and Miss Annie?" Alex was shocked to hear the name of his ex-wife. "No." "Golf has a brother or sister?" "Why do you want to know?" "I want to investigate the case of Miss Annie's death." "Did someone file a report?" Alex asked again. "No, I can't tell you anything if there isn't a report from your office," Alex said. "Please leave. I have a lot of things to do." "Alright. Sorry for disturbing you, sir." Bourne stood up, as did Min. Then they both left Alex's house. As they reached the gate, Bourne stopped Min as he was about to get into his car. "What's wrong?" Min asked, confused. "Get in my car." "Why is my car broken?" "Don't get close. Quickly. Let's get out of here." Bourne immediately pulled Min's wrist and got into his car, quickly leaving Alexandra's residence. Not long after Bourne's car left, with Min's car still neatly parked near the fence belonging to Alex, an explosion was heard. Boom! Min was shocked. He couldn't believe that his only car was now burned to a crisp. "How did you know my car had a bomb?" Min asked immediately. "You're an idiot. Can't you see? Near your car window. I found the bomb before you got into your car." "Oh my god, you really deserve to be called my commander." "Damn." Bourne rolled his eyes. "By the way, why do you want to know about Miss Annie's death?" "So that I can catch Mew." Bourne replied. "Mew. What do you actually know about Golf's family? And how far have you investigated this case?" "Oh, isn't Mr. Nani forbidding you to interfere in Golf's family matters again and again? I've almost died twice while trying to catch Mew. I'm not going to waste this opportunity." "Stupid. God has just postponed your death date if you keep doing things this way," Min said sharply. Once they were in Mew's room, Golf threw away Mew's hand, which was still holding onto his. "What are you hiding from behind me?" Golf asked sarcastically. Mew was silent. He walked towards Golf again, but Golf kept backing away. "I clearly heard someone crying from the basement, and incredibly, I met a girl who looked exactly like Prim," Golf said, not realizing he had already hit the wall of his room. Mew sighed and stood in front of Golf. "The distance from the dining room to the basement is very far. It's impossible for you to move Kevin. They're in less than 5 minutes after I came back from that room," Golf continued. Mew took another step forward, trapping Golf against the wall. He didn't respond to Golf's words. Instead, he untied Golf's hair with his fingers. "Please," Golf said again. "Please, don't hide anything from me. You asked me to love you again, but I keep seeing all the things you're hiding." Mew leaned his lips near Golf's ear and whispered, "I can't tell you, Golf, because if you know, you'll hate me again and you'll leave me. I don't want that to happen again, and I don't want to lose you." Golf shoved Mew's shoulder hard, making him step back. "Then you want me to trust you?" "Trust every word that may not be true, and I have to be silent, ignoring what's happening, as if I can't see or hear anything. Do you think I can do that? Do you think I can do all that?" Golf shouted. "Sorry." "What?" "Sorry," Golf said. "Is that the only word you keep saying?" "Sorry," he said, full of emotion. "Mew, let me go. Let go of Kevin, and let go of the girl you're locking up, and that little boy. You don't know. That's why I want to hear it from you." Golf retorted. "Hear the explanation from your mouth. Hear what you're hiding from me, and everything will be over," he said. I can try to trust you if you share your story with me. Mew was silent. He was about to walk towards Golf again, but Golf took a step back, changing his position. Just explain one thing, please, Golf said, still stepping back. Are you still in a relationship with Alicia? Or have you divorced her? I just want to know that. Golf, marry me. Marry, Golf said. Are you crazy? Or are you already crazy? Everything has been a mess since you came back into my life. Everything I hear or see doesn't make sense. Mew stopped in his tracks, keeping a few meters away from Golf. You know what's strange about the way you're treating me? Golf paused for a moment. You always say marry me, but there's not a single word or action that can prove that what you say is sincere. Mew was silent, staring intensely at Golf without blinking. Do you remember what I said 7 years ago? Mew remained silent. You only need my body, not my love. Do you still remember it? Back then, those words were. Golf paused for a moment, just to test your sincerity. But as time went on, I understood. My words were true. Golf, you want to marry me because you always want to touch me and have sex with me. Golf said, it took 3 years for me to finally understand all the actions and deeds you did for me. Golf laughed sarcastically. Do you know what makes you look stupid? Golf, stop. You always can't give me one answer that makes my heart sway towards you. Golf said. Golf, I told you to stop. Get out. Golf shouted. I said get out. Golf, no. Please, don't do this. Golf quickly. Mew walked towards Golf and immediately embraced him tightly in his arms. Get out. I said get out. Let go, Hick. Let go. Golf kept hitting Mew's chest to get out of his arms, but Mew didn't stop. He kept hugging Golf tighter. Mew ignored Golf's punches. He tightly clasped Golf's waist and rubbed his hair. Golf cried. He was too tired to face the constantly chaotic situations every day. He cried in Mew's embrace until Mew's shirt was wet. Golf's punches weakened. He was about to fall, but Mew held him up first. Mew knew this would happen, which is why he didn't want to leave Golf alone. He carried Golf like a koala, then sat him down on the bed. Golf's head rested against Mew's shoulder. His eyes became heavy. Even his vision was blurry. His sobs became inaudible. Only his saliva was dripping on Mew's shoulder, but Mew didn't mind. Instead, he kept stroking Golf's hair to make him sleep in his lap. After making sure that Golf was truly asleep, Mew laid him down gently on the bed and covered him with a blanket to his chest. He kissed Golf's forehead a few times before leaving his room. Mew wanted to meet Du. Before leaving his room, he locked the door with the password, fingerprint and facial recognition, so that only he could enter his room.